Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Ari, and today we're going to have some more stories about our toxic life. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to my channel, like the video, if you enjoy it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now without further ado, let's go. Today's first story. In this story, OP recounts a painful experience from 2012 to 2013 in which they were cheated on by their ex-fiancé, who subsequently married another woman with whom she had an affair. Despite moving on to a new and happy marriage and selling a house shared with their ex, OP grapples with lingering anger and fury from the past. They worry about the impact of this anger on their present life and seek advice on how to move past it and fully enjoy their new life without being haunted by the past. Now let's get into the story. I was cheated on in 2012 and 2013. My ex and I had started dating in 2007 and got engaged in 2008 but didn't get married until 2013. In the meantime, we bought a house together in 2012. A few weeks after we bought the house together, she started an emotional affair behind my back with another woman, a woman she occasionally interacted with at her job. I didn't find out about the affair until a year later, around late May 2013. She and the affair partner added each other as Facebook friends and started flirting daily via Facebook messaging. The affair partner was markedly less discreet than my fiancé was, so I definitely noticed the affair partner's online presence. The affair partner was a mother of 6 children by 4 different men, and most of her kids had pretty severe problems due to a pretty terrible upbringing. The affair partner was also extremely severely on edge, educated, unemployed, and totally unemployable due to having all these kids to take care of. At the end of June 2013, we were finally ready to marry and I started excitedly planning our wedding. However, my fiancée said she didn't want to be involved in the planning. She said she just wanted to show up at the actual wedding day and marry me and not have to do anything else. In September of 2013, I found out she had arranged to meet up with the affair partner in person under the pretense of celebrating or consoling the affair partner for becoming a grandmother under less than ideal circumstances. As soon as they met up, they were inseparable. They found excuses to keep meeting in person every single day that week. And it became obvious to me within the first 2 or 3 days that something was going on between them that should not be going on. She trickled truth to me for a few weeks, but I asked her to choose between us. I desperately wanted her to choose me instead. She chose the affair partner. She asked for 2 weeks to make arrangements for a new place to live, and I said okay. I assumed she would move out and get an apartment alone somewhere, like a halfway sane person. But no. She got her affair partner to kick out the father of the youngest of her 6 children. And then a day or 2 after the kids watched the baby daddy move out, my ex moved directly from the house we had bought together into the affair partner's house barely 1 week after that. So 3 weeks after calling off our own wedding, she legally married the other woman. At this point in time, I actually felt sorry for her because it was becoming clear to me that she was making an even bigger mess of her own life than she had managed to make of mine. Even though she was pretty much my worst enemy by then, being legally married to the utter train wreck of a woman she'd chosen as her affair partner was an even worse fate than I would ever have wished on my worst enemy. So although I was badly hurt by the manner in which she had dumped me, I didn't necessarily bear any major ill will. I just wanted to finish the process of getting her out of my life so I could move on and never have to see her again. Soon after I had bought out my ex's share of the house that we had bought together, the 2 of them bought a house within 500 feet of it. They moved in within sight of my own front yard, the 2 of them and the affair partner's 6 children. They decorated their front yard like the newlyweds. They were covering it with giant, heart-shaped garden art. And they sat outside on their front porch together for about 16 hours a day, every day, where I couldn't avoid having to see them together. I can only imagine what horrible parents they must have been, but I know they didn't seem to spend much time at all indoors. I was absolutely certain that part of my ex's goal in moving in so close to my house was to force me to let her back into my life in some capacity. I had moved away from all my own friends and family when I moved in with my ex, and I didn't know many people other than my ex in the town where I was now living. So it would have been convenient in some ways to be able to ask my ex to do little things like watch my pets when I was out of town. And I had a strong feeling that my ex was hoping for exactly that. I also strongly suspected that at some point my ex's marriage would fall apart and she'd try to finagle her way back into a relationship with me again. As a result, she'd always been pretty brilliant at manipulating me, so I was terrified that she might actually somehow succeed at manipulating me all over again and manage to waste even more years of my life than she already had. So I put a great deal of effort into building up stronger emotional antipathy toward her. I hadn't started out hating her guts when she cheated on me, but I consciously trained myself to hate her guts because I didn't otherwise trust myself to be able to resist her efforts to come back into my life in one way or another and cause even more harm to me than before. The threat of that is over now. I'm very happily married to someone else, and I finally sold a house that I bought with my ex. My ex's affair partner cheated on her and dumped her for a man. I live 50 miles away from my ex now, and with any luck, I should finally never have to see her ever again. But the anger, all the anger that I deliberately built up to protect myself from any effort she might make to come back into my life is still hanging around. It's not so useful to me now, but it remains a black cloud over my head. It interrupts my thoughts and puts me into angry moods when I could be having the time of my life. How do you get past this? How do you turn down the volume of the long-standing rage and fury so you can be more attuned to enjoying your new life instead of wasting any more time on your old one? How do you turn down the volume of the long-standing rage and fury so you can be more attuned to enjoying your new life instead of wasting any more time on your old one? Here are my thoughts on the situation. OP, the fact that your wife had the audacity to move next to you is shocking. I do agree with you that her moving right next to you was an attempt to win you back, and boy, did it absolutely backfire on her. I'm glad you were able to get out of that situation and have moved on with your life. Continue to work on yourself and become the best version of you. I wish you the best of luck moving forward. Today's second story. In this story, OP experienced a sudden and distressing change in his marriage of 9 years. His wife went from being happy and communicative to withdrawn and gloomy. She struggled to find purpose in life, leading her to quit her job as a fitness trainer after a student insulted her. She started neglecting herself, gained weight, and overindulged in treats. However, her mood suddenly improved, and she adopted 2 cats, started exercising, and taking care of her appearance. The story takes a dramatic turn when the husband unexpectedly returns home one day and discovers his wife with another man, who he recognizes from a recent funeral they attended. He confronts the situation, and the truth about their affair comes to light. The husband decides to divorce his unfaithful wife, and with the help of a prenuptial agreement, he retains ownership of their house. The story ends with the husband reflecting on his journey, finding a new girlfriend, and emphasizing the importance of self-sufficiency before entering into a new marriage. Now let's get into the story. I, 32, wasn't good enough for my wife, 36. I still don't know why, and it still bothers me today. We were married for 9 years when my wife went from a happy, outgoing, communicative woman to a completely shut down and gloomy individual. She mentioned that she was having trouble finding purpose in life. She really enjoyed fitness and working out, so she did work at a gym as a trainer for a while but suddenly quit after one of her students insulted her and said she didn't know what was good for them. She didn't want to work for a large corporation and couldn't find any shops to work at. Before I knew it, she stopped taking care of herself. She didn't want to exercise and started overindulging in edible treats she would normally limit herself with. But then just as quickly as it happened, it started to reverse. My wife didn't tell me anything different other than she was starting to feel better. I thought that was great and asked her what caused her mind to change. At first, she said she didn't know, but then she said she started to realize that animals live their life even without knowing their purpose, so she could do the same. That seemed fine to me. Around the same time she adopted 2 cats. She started exercising again to take off the 10 pounds she gained, and she started doing her hair and makeup each day. Even though she wasn't going anywhere that I knew of, I made sure to compliment her and offer her encouragement. I brought home cat toys and treats along with flowers for her. I did everything I could to support her and be her husband. It wasn't enough. One night I brought work papers home to work on, and the next day I forgot to bring them back to the office. So I returned home. 3 hours after I went to work. There was an awfully nice car parked in her driveway. My heart started racing instantly. I didn't recognize it, so I knew someone was visiting my wife. I parked behind this mystery car to block them in and ran into the garage. I closed the sliding garage door to slow down anyone trying to escape. I really was thinking about the worst-case scenario. After I entered the house, I made sure the front and back door were locked, too. I went downstairs to our gaming basement, as we called it. As I came down the stairs, I saw them scrambling to stop doing what they were doing. One of them was my wife, and the other was a man I saw once before. I saw him at my wife's cousin's funeral a month ago, right before my wife's outlook on life changed for the better. Was this guy blood related to my wife? I didn't know they were both naked. AP grabbed his clothes and dove behind a stack of boxes to get dressed. My wife wrapped a blanket around her, sat on the couch, and face-planted into a pill of discreet. I asked loudly what the hell was happening right now, and my wife just asked me what I was doing back home. I asked if that was really important when I just found her screwing another man and quickly followed up by asking who the hell he was. She said he was Alan, but we'll just call him AP. They met at the funeral we went to, and they weren't going to have intimate. They were just going to make out for some innocent fun. I was so offended and disgusted with her at this moment. Why did she think that was even okay? Why did she want to do this? And did she take me for a fool? It was obvious to me they were having intimate. When I came down the steps and I was sure this wasn't the first time he was in her house, I decided to bluff. I told her I installed discreet security cameras outside her house 4 months ago, so I was going to know if this wasn't the first time he was here. I shouted to AP, who was still hiding, and asked him if he'd been to my house before this. He was extremely nervous when he replied, telling me he didn't want any trouble and would prefer to stay out of it. I screamed that he was involved with my wife, so apparently he couldn't stay out of it. I asked him again if he was in my house before, and he said he would tell me whatever I wanted to know if I came with him outside to his car. My wife screamed for him not to tell him anything, which was the first admission that she wasn't telling me the truth. I looked at her with fury in my eyes. I couldn't help it. I'm so glad I didn't completely snap and go crazy or anything. I agreed to AP's terms and went with him outside. He couldn't have been older than 24, so he was at least 12 years younger than my wife. On the way out, I locked my wife in the basement. I had to shut the door really quickly because of how close she was to following us and protesting. I didn't want her to interrupt us at all. When we got outside, AP was very discouraged to see that his car was blocked in. I told him to start spilling the beans. He hesitated, of course. He probably didn't want me to savagely attack him. But he was outside now and could see his car, which gave him renewed hope that I would let him leave. He said they started seeing each other the day after the funeral. Every day I was at work, he came over to see her. He said at first it didn't go beyond just being friends and playing video games, but then my wife started coming on to him. She would ask him how she looked and stuff like that until they finally ended up doing it. I couldn't help it. I started crying. I asked him why. He said he only ever had a sexual relationship once before, so it was hard for him not to give in. He knew she was married and knew who I was, but he was excited she liked him. I said that was enough explanation. I thanked him for telling me the truth like a man. I moved my car so he could leave. Before he left, though, I told him never to speak to this woman again, even if she said we were divorced. I told him she wasn't good for anybody and he could find a better woman than her. He agreed. Just after he left, my wife's sister pulled up like she was responding to a fire. She tried to get out of the car before it was in the park and had to shove it into the park with her leg hanging out. She jumped out and started screaming at me that I locked her sister in the basement. I told her yes, I did because I had to talk to her lover without her screaming at us. She stopped dead in her tracks and asked lover? To which I replied yes, she had a lover in her house while I was at work. Since I had time to talk with him alone, he told me they'd been sleeping together for weeks before I found them today. She was speechless. Just then her phone started ringing. It was my wife. She asked me if we could go get her and I said yes. We went in, unlocked it and she barged in looking like a wild animal. When she stopped screaming, she realized her sister was much calmer than she expected. Her sister asked her if she was cheating on me and my wife just rolled her eyes and asked if we were serious. Her sister told her to stop playing dumb and be honest because it is not okay for her to be cheating on me. My wife was speechless and annoyed. She finally said they didn't have intimacy. I let her know that AP told me everything before he left. She just stood there looking like an idiot with her mouth hanging open. I told her I saw him on top of her doing the motion and I didn't need her admission. I just wanted a divorce. She did a double take and asked me why, like she didn't already know. Her sister went upstairs to start packing her stuff. My wife's face was pale and her makeup was smeared. By the time her sister persuaded her to get in her car and stay at her house for a while, she could not believe her life was changing and she was caught. I could tell she never really considered the possibility or consequences of me catching her in the act. It's a shame. If she put any thought into her actions, she might have realized she wasn't ready to move or divorce me. Why wasn't my support and presence enough in her life? I showered her with love, but she only thrived with the attention of another man. I told her these things when she wouldn't stop calling me. She said she couldn't live without me and she didn't think hanging out with this guy would lead to having intimate. I told her I didn't believe a word she said because she had a man over at her house while I was at work. I added that her behavior switched so quickly once she met this guy, so I knew she was sleeping with him and relishing the attention. Her sister caught her having intimate with a completely different guy in her own bed. That was obviously insulting and upsetting enough that she kicked out my wife. By this time, our divorce was final and I got to keep my house. 9 years ago, I had my wife sign a prenup in my favor, and since I was paying for the house and she didn't think we were going to get divorced, she signed it. I don't know where my ex is now. I haven't heard anything about her, and I'm extremely glad we never had children. I've since started dating a new woman, and we've been together for 1 year. I'm taking it slow and only have my girlfriend sleep over for short lengths of time. To be ready for a new marriage means you're perfectly capable of standing on your own 2 feet and don't depend on another person to function. I know that sounds odd because it's joining together in marriage, but that's the best way to ensure your marriage will be successful. Here are my thoughts on the situation. I'm truly sorry that your wife didn't appreciate your efforts to connect and emotionally bond with her. From your story, it seems like she may have started thinking that she deserved more than just one person's affection. It's possible she went through a personal crisis and found validation in someone else's flattering opinion of her. This can happen when a partner begins to see their spouse as less important than others, often because they start fixating on their spouse's flaws. Sometimes, routine can lead to boredom in a marriage, making people wonder if they deserve something better. However, it's essential to remember that this is just ego talking. We all have our imperfections, and our partners accept and work through them. No one is more deserving of love and attention than another. We all deserve a fair chance at finding unconditional love, which means having a partner who remains loyal and doesn't betray you for anything. Let's all stay humble and committed in our relationships. Thank you for sharing your story.